Yeah, and everyone pronounces it Tolkien, but it's Tolkien, so
that's
nice to be Yule.
That's a good point. Hi everyone, and welcome to Vassals of Kingsgrave's great linear A Song of Ice and Fire reread. This is episode 95, which is huge. This episode could potentially spoil any events in George R. R. Martin's published series, including TWOW preview chapters, but I'll try to flag those up. And it will not, however, contain show spoilers, especially since I'm on the call. The last episode ended with Cersei's Walk of Shame, and in this episode we will cover Theon 5, aka the Turncloak, Dany 7, and Arya 2, aka the Ugly Little Girl. It's all from Dance. The events take place between June 20th and 24th of the year 300. Kind of incredible that we're still in 300, but anyway. Meanwhile, the events of Jon Con 2 and the King's Prize / Asha continue to take place over this period. So I'm Mary, and I'll be your host today, also known as Nymeria on the forums. And with me tonight we have Matt Varley.
Hey, Varley on the forums.
Great. We have Bina.
Hey everybody, Bina 007 here.
Matt 2.0.
Hey, Blue Armor on the forum.
We also have Adam.
Hey, this is Adam, drownedsnow on the forums.
Great.
Titles.
Okay, and that's it for today. So, after Cersei 2, we jump back 24 chapters to Theon 5, and this takes place on the very next day, June 20th. And I think Varley is doing a recap for us.
Sure, so we get a good look at Winterfell and what's going on while Stannis waits in the snow. In the hall, Theon is weighing his options about, whether he should escape or not. He goes through his normal kind of bipolar talking about escaping, but then realizing he's not as brave as he was because he's Reek, and Reek isn't a person that does such heroic things, and so he kind of has all this self-doubt for good reason. We take a look outside where the kids are playing with snowballs and everything's kind of like a lighter atmosphere. The horses are shivering in their stables. Theon walks into the Godswood and has this really kind of moving moment where he thinks he can pray to these gods, but then doubts himself, and he hears Jane Poole sobbing. So kind of a roundabout look at Winterfell and what's going on there. In the hall, Rowan, one of the washerwomen of Abel, seems very interested in how Theon was able to conquer Winterfell and if maybe there was any secret tunnels, entrances, or exits. But Theon tells her basically to piss off. Lady Dustin then grabs him and asks to be shown the crypts of Winterfell, and once they're down there, she tells him lots of information about Brandon and how charming he was and how he wanted his sword so sharp it could cut a cunt hair. What a charmer. How she loved him and how she wanted to marry him, but Rickard Stark had Southron ambitions, and I think that's the first time we've heard that. And then Lady Dustin has some rather awful plans for Ned's bones because she blames him for the loss of Brandon and her tie to the Stark, and then later her husband. And that's where it ends. I really didn't have anything new and amazing to say about this. I did look up Bear, which trimmed Lady Dustin's dress, and that's a bluish-gray squirrel. And that's about it.
So, Lady Dustin is like supposed to be really old, is the impression she gives, but she can't be that old, right?
She's got to be like 40, maybe.
Because she talks about how she's like old, and she like, I don't know, I guess the way she talks about herself, like, it makes me envision that she's like wrinkled and gray, but Brandon wasn't that much older than Ned, and if he took her Maidenhead, she couldn't have been that much older than him, right?
Yeah, and I think Ned was like 32 or 33.
I think, she's in the same generation. She's just, maybe a bit of a mistake on George's part here, but also the way she sees herself as this bitter old woman whose husband died quite early in her life.
Yeah, I think it's more just like the widow thing, and at least in this world, past her prime childbearing years. I think it's more just like no one's looking to take her to get a second husband.
And it's not about how we see her. It's about, in that society, people seem to live these very telescoped lives where you're sort of old quite early. And it's internalized misogyny. Society sees her as past value, and so she sees herself as past value, even if she's probably only 43, which is basically my age. I am also old and withered and bitter and past value too.
Oh, Bina, you've been married for what? 2 months?
I know. We live the opposite of telescope lives these days. We don't even get going with lifestyle.
Right. Yeah, if you're 25 in this world and you're not married, you've
wasted away.
You might have a chance left, but not much.
Yeah.
So I think it was brought up in the earlier Theon chapter, but again, we're just reminded that maybe not everyone at Winterfell is on board with the Boltons. But I think again that's just repeated news. This chapter, I don't know. I'm having that weird memory problem where it's like I thought this chapter was a lot cooler than it actually is, and I just found it to be like Lady Dustin's very petty and in a revenge scheme, and not as interesting as I think I remember it.
I mean, I think there's plenty of interesting tidbits. It's just that we spent a lot of time going over them in the past, so kind of rereading it, there's nothing really new we can glean from all of the discussions we may have had previously.
Oh man, you guys are so down on this chapter. I love this. I love these chapters in general. I think they're amazing.
I like this chapter.
I was about to say I'm trying to be more positive about it, because there's a lot of stuff with the missing swords, and as well as just Lady Dustin's kind of motivations in general, as that's a hotly debated topic. I just think it's a little hard to tell where she's at this point, just because she kind of has she has hatreds towards 3 relevant houses when it comes to the Starks, the Boltons, and the Freys, and it's going to come down to which one she hates the most as to kind of where her loyalties lie, but it's somewhat hard to predict at this point.
I think you guys are all very negative on this chapter. This chapter is the first one in my 2-volume paperback edition of Dance, and by the way, we have now finished with the first volume of that. So I got very choked up reading this because I actually figured out that, oh my goodness, we're done with all but the final paperback volume that I have. That made me very sad and sort of melancholy, and maybe that kind of influenced my reading of these 3 chapters, but I was pleasantly surprised at how thoroughly I enjoyed them. I thought this was such a good chapter for Theon. He's so aware and politically astute, and if only he trusted himself and didn't slip back into Reek. He's a bit like Sansa. He's gone through all this trauma and he's becoming a really interesting observer. And I felt that as I don't think it's any particular reason behind it, but as an opening chapter for the second volume, to sort of set the scene of what is happening in the north and all these different factions moving into position. We don't quite know what Lady Barbary Dustin's doing, but we see some of the history of the northern houses. It was a really beautiful overview. So I really thoroughly enjoyed it, I have to say.
Well, I mean, I feel like it's just wheels spinning while we're waiting for Stannis to get to Winterfell, which he never does in this book. So it's just, I guess it's more frustrating in that aspect where it's, we get it that Ramsay's bad and whatever he did to Reek was awful, but like these half hints and half remembrances of Theon of what happened, I don't know. I'm getting bored of it.
Oh my goodness. I just thought it was beautifully written. I mean, there's this line where he's talking about, there's this beautiful sentence. No, when he says there were no chains, at least none that men could see. Like, he's really aware of how Ramsay how psychological abuse and coercive control works. And I think that's very impressive. And I don't know. I mean, don't you get excited reading about the missing crypt swords, or are you guys over that too?
Well, we know what happened to him. Hodor grabbed him.
I think that it's like there's important stuff that's laid down here, but also as the Reek turning into Theon chapters go on, we get more and more of like Ramsay is really good at one-on-one, like manipulating and intimidating and controlling people. Like he said, you know, there are no chains that you can see, etc. But then Lady Dustin here says that, you know, hey, if he wants to keep the North, like he best have Lady Arya smiling once in a while. Like her cries are like more dangerous than Stannis' swords. Like he's completely inept at like, you know, controlling the masses or working with allies. And, you know, Roose, who seems to be better at that, is also just sort of letting him go along with that. So I don't know. You would think that he would, you know, get his pleasure somewhere else, and he would treat fake Arya a little better because he kind of needs her, at least until the other lords have left.
Yeah. Well, the reason he goes after her is because she is fake Arya, right? Like he knows that she's a fake, and that he doesn't have to pretend. He can be as brutal as he wants to.
Well. Right, but he does need, like, this whole, for everyone else there, even though a lot of them aren't necessarily sold on her being Arya, like, he needs this to work, he needs the show to work.
Yeah.
Just like he needs Theon to, you know, front as Theon. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I just misremembered this chapter. I thought there was a lot more in it, and it's the same thing that happened when I did the Griffin Reborn chapter. Like, maybe there's just been too much time in between my rereads where I've been like, oh yeah, that chapter like is the one where like all this stuff happens, and then I reread it. It's like, actually, not much actually happened.
Well, I think a lot of that is like that John Conn chapter, this chapter, like we get bits of like Brandon Stark backstory, we get bits of, you know, Rhaegar backstory that has been spun up with stuff from other chapters to make theories, to have this whole life in the fandom. So, I mean, that it may not exist right here on the page, but all of that does kind of stem from these chapters. It's born from that. So that's why maybe it feels like that there was more in these when you read them, because, you know, you go to Reddit or you go to our forums and, like, you know, we're going off on this stuff. But, I mean, all of that, the seeds of it are here.
Yeah.
I kind of feel this dissatisfaction with the chapter speaks more to the time that we've had to mull over it than the actual quality of the writing and the chapter itself. It speaks to a kind of boredom with we know we're not going to get, like, we could have a whole discussion about why does Lady Dustin want to be in the crypt? Is it psychological closure with Ned? Is she trying to find out some information tactically? But, yeah, what are we going to do with that? Because we know by the end of the book it hasn't come into play yet.
Yeah, I think you're right, Bina. Like, I keep on looking for, like, more Easter eggs and not finding them and being like, well, then I know this chapter. I know everything that there is to know about it. So, yeah, I think maybe that's it. Maybe that it's just been picked to death, and we're still looking for little new pieces, and there are none. I
still find it very evocative. Like, I opened up the book on a very sunny day as it happened, and I was immediately in Winterfell. I had this very vivid visual depiction of what it was, how the crypts were. I just felt it was a beautifully written chapter, and I think all of these 3 chapters are well written, and again, just gives me renewed faith in George that even late era Dance, he was writing good stuff.
Yeah. There's an interesting line that Theon thinks where he's looking over the burnt winter town, and he says, the wounds that snow make, capital S snow, snow conceals, lowercase snow. So, like, you know, he's talking about the bastards, but I was wondering maybe if that could pertain to Jon, too. But then I'm just grasping at straws.
mean, I will say, yeah, Ramsay's kind of burning and sack of Winterfell is kind of coming back to bite them, as they have to try and rebuild some of this stuff, especially the stables and whatnot. Yeah, no, I do like this chapter a lot. I think, especially in terms of writing, I think Theon's chapters kind of remain the best POV in Dance. And there's some pretty good scenes here going back and forth, and in his head between Reek and Theon, and the conversations he has with Rowan and Lady Dustin, always suspecting, always trying to think things out. And I thought, we get kind of his acknowledgement that he really wants to be one of the Starks, and we kind of get that loyalty, like switching from Pike to the Starks, kind of at this point where he can't really go back to the Iron Islands anymore, and he's trying to pray the godswood as well in front of the werewood tree. Actually, something in your recap, Varley, I don't have the book in front of me, but it seemed there was an interesting thing talking about, like, hearing someone crying and hearing the tears.
Right.
I think that passage is meant to say that it's not Jaime he hears, it's himself who's kind of like crying and falling forward, like in front of the werewood tree.
Yeah, I could see that too, but I think it is, you hear Jane sobbing, but I thought it was interesting, like when I first read this, because I thought it was him sobbing, but him blaming either Jane or even says, like, do the gods cry? Like, maybe, like, he's trying to put it off on anyone else but him. So
yeah,
I see what you're saying.
My interpretation.
Yeah, I didn't read it like that, but that was a question I had actually, because Lady Dustin also mentions Jane's crying, and like I assume people hear her crying when they go near her room, but they don't hear her everywhere in the castle, obviously, because she's weeping, she's not making a lot of noise, I would assume. So it's kind of weird, this ever presence of her crying everywhere, like everyone can hear it all the time.
Well, I think it adds to the ambiance of Winterfell that it is in a sad state compared to its former glory, and it's held by people that are not the Starks.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel
a lot of roofs that are, destroyed and open air areas and stuff like that.
This chapter, like the previous Theon chapter, actually, but it makes me really nostalgic, and like Bina, like you were saying, we feel in Winterfell immediately, but we also see what we've lost, and the town that it was, the castle it was, it's lost now, and that chapter makes me feel that very deeply, which goes on to say that George writes this really well.
And even the idea of these kind of like jerry-built new gates, and Theon's wandering around and thinking, gosh, these aren't as beautiful as the old ones, they've just like hacked them in and there's no beauty to them, it's all practical. But it's been done, right? I mean, there is an efficiency, a brutal industrial efficiency to the Bolton rule. I mean, arguably more effectively in some way than Ned, but...
Which almost makes it more sad, because
they are effective in a way.
Yeah, but they're not beautiful.
Well, I mean, we're told that, like, Roose Bolton put the squatters of Winterfell to work and said he'd be merciful, and mercy was at the end of the noose. So, I mean, they had a slave labor force there that they just, they needed new doors, so they threw up new doors. They needed a new stable, they threw that up, and then I wanted to, like, in my recap, and I don't think it came over as well, but, like, I just imagine, like, seeing it from, like, 50 feet above Winterfell and just kind of looking from the Great Hall into, like, the yard, into the stables, onto the wall, into the Godswood, and then back into Winterfell, and then down in the crypts. And I feel like it would, in, like, TV or a movie, it would be, like, one single shot where you could see, like, everything that's happening. And I think what would be interesting is the dynamic of who is outside and who is inside, because it seems like all the snowmen are everyone who has joined the Bolton and Freys, except for the Bolton and Freys, and they're all in the main hall being warm and, eating beef stew or whatever. They make a very fat snowman.
It's kind of hard to make a really slim snowman, isn't it?
I think it'd be really hard to make a one-arm, or missing half his arm.
Okay. Any other point of discussion on this chapter?
I guess my only real points of question, but maybe this has been answered before, is what do you think Lady Barbary Dustin wants with the crypts? Do you think it's just that, conveniently for us, she just wants a bit of a psychological walk down memory lane and therefore we get all the backstory, and if so, that's fairly clumsy? Or does she need to see the crypts for some reason?
Is she just verifying the bones aren't there, you mean? Or
why? I mean, it just seems to me like if she's not there for a reason, that then becomes revealed. She's very
I don't. You mean like it's part of a plot, part of some scheme? I don't know if that's true. Maybe if she suspects anything, like the missing swords.
Maybe it's.
I don't know.
But it's not a flippant request. She's she's had her people search for the crypts, and she cannot find them. And so she asked Theon. So maybe it's just a point of catharsis for her to say goodbye to Brandon.
Yeah. That's what it comes across as. But there could be more to it.
I think it makes sense that it's more psychological than actually intrigue. I assume she's been to Winterfell in her life, but now she's there and she doesn't control the place, but she's there.
Crypts, right?
Yeah, exactly. And here she has the power to get in.
Like, he's insistent to get down there, but he barely knew Lyanna. And it's like a sort of thing, I feel like only the Stark family really goes down there. I don't think that the Vassals or anything go down there and pay respects, right? So.
Yeah, that's my point, is now she has the power to find it and get in, and it seems like she's asserting her power on the Stark family. You're all dead and I'm still alive, and I even go into your crypt, and that's powerful.
I don't know why it can't be one that doesn't lead to the other, right? It could just be that this is her emotional catharsis, and she wants to see, Brandon's grave and all that, and then getting down there and noticing the swords missing and things. Maybe that activates some sort of plot where she realizes they're not dead, or I don't know, but not necessarily what her intention going down.
Yeah, I don't think it's some kind of National Treasure Dan Brown book where there's some kind of secret code hidden in the crypts for her to discover or something. It's just
no, but what Wilson is writing in a chat actually makes sense. I mean, it could be that he's saying that maybe it's part of the Northern conspiracy because they need a hiding place for where whatever the plan is goes down, and that could be your answer, Bina, or a possible answer.
I would hope so, because otherwise it's just she needed to walk down memory lane to tell Theon some backstory for us, which feels a little bit weak. She's so set up. She's like Chekhov's widow. She's so set up to be mysterious and conspiratorial. I feel it needs to have a big payoff.
Yeah, she probably, in terms of story-wise, she probably does open up a little more to Theon merely for narrative convenience than anything else.
Well, I think she knows that, the last two lines of the last few lines of the chapter are you do well that you never speak of what we talked about down here. And Theon's oh, I got it. Hold my tongue or lose it. And she's you've been trained well. I don't think she would be able to do that to actual Theon, pre-Reek Theon, because he wasn't, broken to the point of, where she had that sort of control over him.
Does George just love Theon?
I think he does, yeah.
I mean, every Theon chapter
and that's a hard
is really well written. What he does with Theon is maybe his most impressive character journey, the way he takes him from kind of the rogue to the hated betrayer to, this, you have no idea who this guy is, then he's tortured, you feel sorry for him, you realize it's Theon, etc.
He's like Smeagol, right? I mean, he's got to be fun to write because he's so psychologically complicated.
Yeah, I think he's way easier to write and that the plot around him is way easier to write than obviously Dany is, because he can see where this is going and he can see where Theon is going, and he can take it at whichever pace he wants.
He has so many tools he can use in Theon chapters, and there's no one else to see the things Theon is seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to the crypts thing, I mean, the only other, I think, tinfoil thing is, if there's just deeper down the crypts, there's some escape hatch or something, but there's no real evidence of that other than just mere speculation.
Well, indeed. Oh well, we will wait, and maybe we'll find out.
Yeah. Anything else?
Run off of mere speculation?
Yeah.
That's what we've been doing.
It's all we have, Varley. It's all we have.
Oh, come on. It's too early in the call to get all melancholic.
Yeah, guys.
Okay. Anything else?
Let's see. There were ravens spying on Theon. Something to note, I suppose.
Yeah, but then he went to the Godswood. That's like direct telephone.
Right. Direct line with the werewood as well. I don't know. I mean, we don't need to run over Southron ambitions again, although I definitely just heard, as I'm reading it here, the dun-dun-dun, the wink at the camera, Southron ambitions. And yeah, that's about it. I don't know. I haven't done real research into the swords and other stuff. I plan on doing that for the Ghost in Winterfell chapter coming down the line.
We do have him calling himself a Ghost in Winterfell already. Yeah, I mean, I think it's happened over the past couple chapters.
Yeah.
I think it's highly likely that Lady Dustin knows that Arya is fake.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she suspects it very strongly, I think.
Yeah. The problem is, when we see all these characters for the first time, I think it's for, the Harvest Festival, and Arya and Sansa are already gone. So I don't know when the last time they would have, seen Arya.
Well, yeah, but, so as I was kind of looking over stuff, just looking at the wiki for Lady Dustin, it seems that for the trip from Barrowton to Winterfell, she's the one, she insisted on taking charge of Jane, so I'm kind of assuming that she found out during that trip. Or basically confirmed.
Yeah, I think for anyone, Lady Dustin is quite observant, I think, and from Jane's behavior and even Theon behavior, she can probably, even if she doesn't have the actual confirmation, she can suspect it.
But she's an anti-Stark, or at least she fronts that to Theon, although...
Yeah, we don't know.
What else would she say to Theon, because Theon is so closely connected to the Boltons?
Well, that's still a mystery to me.
Right. If he reports to his master that, Lady Dustin is pro-Stark, that's a problem for her, right?
Yeah. So she doesn't have to be this, bitter and nasty, but she certainly couldn't be, rebellious.
God damn it, Lady Dustin.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying. We don't.
What are you up to?
We don't know who she hates the most. That's what it's going to come down to, is to who she hates the most.
What's your plan? What are you aiming at?
Anyway, so we skip forward just one chapter to Dany 7, which takes place a day later on June 21st and 22nd. And thank you, Bina, for jumping in for this chapter.
It is my pleasure, because this was the Dany chapter that was actually also, I thought, cool, which I don't normally say about Dany chapters. So, as the chapter opens, Dany's getting her rocks off with Daario. He asks her to marry him, but she shows remarkable self-awareness. She realizes he doesn't actually love her, but sleeping with a powerful queen, and that if she marries him and doesn't marry Hizdahr, she'll lose her kingdom. So she will become immediately less attractive to him. So she's under no illusions that he's basically a dumb jock who's semi-useful, but also great fun in bed. That said, she's having nightmares that Hizdahr is a warlock with an ice stick. Interesting. I think that whole nightmare says more about George than it does about Dany. Daario then introduces her in a very long-winded way to #Quentyn is alive, Garrus Drinkwater, and Archibald Ironwood. We get the backstory on how Willem, Darien, Oberyn Martell planned a very secret alliance many years ago, which would be sealed with Viserys marrying Arianne and Dany marrying Quentyn, and so the former lot ruling Westeros and Dany and Quentyn ruling Dawn. Her own very special super weedy frog prince of her own. She doesn't seem hugely impressed by Quentyn as a suitor. But nonetheless, even though he's very weedy, this causes Daario to try and flex and mock Quentyn and just generally be a dick, which we're all very familiar with by now. Dany also decides that she's not going to trust the Dornish because she remembers Quaithy's prophecy, warning of the sun's son, which is very clearly alluding to Quentyn. So she goes ahead and marries Hizdahr. We also get a lot of backstory on Dany's mum, Rhaella, being courted by a member of the Kingsguard back in the day. And we also get, probably more interestingly, the story of King Aerys being in love with, well, not in love with, but lusting after Joanna Lannister, and quote-unquote taking liberties during the bedding, which I assumed was some kind of sexual abuse, but not rape, because there is a point where he's complaining that there isn't the right of the first night, so it's something short of that, but still pretty horrible. And I think sets up the relationship that many years later at a certain tourney, he probably did rape Joanna and potentially produce Tyrion, but I guess we can get into that. And all the while this is going on, the Yunkai are prepping a siege to starve Meereen out, and George notices, or she notices, that they're not actually building proper siege engines in order to storm Meereen. They're just going to wait for disease and starvation to do its work, which is pretty grim, because we've all heard the tales from Stannis about what that is like. So it's horrible, and I think it serves, having that mentioned at the start of the chapter, just serves to show that she's in a real bind, and she has to marry, either person on offer, Hizdahr, Daario, or Quentyn. That these are not great options. So I kind of had some sympathy for Dany, and I really like the chapter because there's a lot. I think, like with the Theon one, there's a lot going on in terms of just setting up the stage of what's happening in this part of the world. So I really enjoyed it.
Too bad Quentyn dies, huh?
I don't see a fucking chain of evidence, chain of custody.
We don't
need to get into that here in this particular episode.
We'll have a specific episode just for that chapter, because but it will come up.
Titled Quentyn Lives!
Obviously. I mean, Bina is probably already written down to host it, so we'll have that discussion. For now, let's not talk about Quentyn's impending death, or at least bad burning.
He has, awful timing, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Gets there, day before the wedding?
Well, he got there earlier, but Dany wouldn't hold court, so...
Yeah, he definitely takes that first meeting with Dany, I feel like, way harder than he should. I feel like I don't think she was as mean to him as he perceives. It's just that his timing was god awful.
Yeah.
Yep.
But since everyone else was mean to him, I get why he's feeling this way after that meeting.
Yeah, no, you understand based on the character he is why, he would perceive that as just such a staunch rejection. It's just one of those things where his personal history kind of skews his perception of that.
Well, even in one of the Barristan chapters later, his two buddies, one of them goes, yeah, he threw himself at your bitch queen and she just laughed in his face or something. And I was like,
right, yeah, but that's ridiculous. I think that was pretty hilarious calling him frog. I would have laughed too.
This has a lot of uncomfortable sexual writing. Can I just say that? That's
I was
sours me on the chapter.
Yeah.
She took him in every hole that was possible for
Like-
women or whatever.
Or like,
Right,
she prepared him with her mouth as he taught her, and then like, oh, Quentyn is revealed, and I'm like, I'm still not over fucking Daario.
Her shouting out, "You're beautiful," for some reason.
Yeah.
She's like what, 15? Wait, how old is she?
16, I think.
16.
say
So I can
16.
forgive her for being seduced by the weird troll man. Like, she's a child.
With a blue fork
Golden
beard.
tooth.
Or whatever.
Yeah,
Right,
golden
right.
tooth and all.
Yeah, he dyed his hair blue again, just for her.
Well, that's love right there.
Yeah, and then this Quentyn kid shows up, and she's like, yeah, no, thank you.
And she's like, well, the other night was actually kind of sexier. Couldn't you be him?
But I think it's established. I mean, like, I don't think we need to relitigate the fact that George is a terrible writer of sex and a great writer of horror.
Yeah.
And food.
Right.
Yeah.
So in my darkest moment, I wrote to myself, these two chapters are so early in A Dance with Dragons second half, and yet neither of the battles they presage, Winterfell and Meereen, has happened by the end of it.
No, the whole fucking book is setting up for something that doesn't happen.
Right,
But
which is
anyway.
the great disappointment of Dan's.
Yes.
Anyway,
It's already
more
been
constructively, I thought it was interesting having this chapter, like if we talk about the linear reread, it was interesting having this paired with the Theon chapter, because I think both of them are incredibly self-aware about their position and the motives of other people, which shows real growth. So, you know, when she has that very, almost chillingly, like, clear sort of paragraph about why Daario is with her and not being under any illusions about that, I thought that was it showed a maturing.
Well, I agree, but at the same time, I also think that her advisors don't really respect her. They don't really fear her at all. She's kind of lost the dragons, and everyone can see that. And she used the "I'm only a little girl and know nothing of," insert the right word. She's used it too much, and it worked to her advantage at some points, but now it kind of seems to me like she's too much into character, and people actually start to consider her like that.
Yeah, you can't play that trick too many times. People will stop buying it.
Well, or they will believe it so much that there's no respect for her anymore. And even she doesn't really express as herself in this chapter. Not a lot. She's very resigned, very she doesn't really hold court anymore. She's giving it up to fate and hoping that Hizdahr will bring peace. And I get why she does that, because she's so stuck in this situation. She has really no other choice, but she's not as she's not like she was before the Blood of the Dragon, a Targaryen. She's more submissive.
Isn't that realistic?
Sorry.
I mean, if you've lived through watching your Velvet Revolutions getting overturned, and then living in a city which is basically under terrorist siege, I think this is actually realistic. She can't just constantly be this marries who goes from victory to victory and gets out of jail.
Absolutely.
I think it's really good writing. This idea that she's still clever, she's still self-aware, but she is also very, very stuck in a hard place. And these jokers are turning up from dawn. She's got this guy who, at one point, she's like, "Oh my god, he's going to go off and slit some people's throats because he's that much of a jock dick." And you know, like no one is sensible around her to help her out.
So yeah, you're right. It's very realistic, but it's also, I think it shows how much George himself is stuck on her story, and it's the story leading George and not the other way around, but not in a good way, not in the way that it's easy to write, but in the way that he got stuck and it gets worse and worse.
Well, we know
Yeah, I
that
agree.
the Myronese knot or whatever really held up this book, and it is Dany's storyline I think that he's dealing with, because I think that there's been such a label put on him of like, you know, turning tropes up on their head that he doesn't want this, rightful heir to the kingdom to come back and get the kingdom so easily, and I think it just gets him tripped up. He buys his own hype, so he doesn't want to do what's expected of Dany,
I will say the kind of the final line of this chapter is I found particularly good and does relate to Theon's a lot, where her and Hizdahr, walk out chained together. They have their marriage customs. They have them chained, with hands and feet or something. I forget exactly what it was, but I really enjoyed that one where it's we've seen what happens when you chain a dragon in the crypts. It can't grow, and now we get that kind of physical manifestation with Dany herself, and that this marriage is chaining her to a person that she can't be an effective ruler and a conqueror of Westeros.
Yeah, it's a deeply, deeply tragic chapter in some ways, and very similar to Theon, because they're both these people who don't really know where they belong. And there's this awful line where she says, it will never be my city, it will never be my home, just as she literally marries one of the native aristos and chains herself to ruling it. And, to me it's very similar to Theon. He's just stuck out of time, out of place, very aware of the predicament he's in. And it's horrid. Really horrid.
Except that in the Theon chapters, at least when you think of the Great Northern Conspiracy, you kind of have some hints that something is preparing. And yes, we don't see it yet, but I wouldn't go so far as to say there's hope in Theon chapters, but there's something exciting,
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on with everything you said about George writing this, and that he's evidently enjoying himself when he writes the Theon chapter, and there is something very meta and analogous about Dany's situation and George's situation when he's writing those chapters. It's like he's describing himself chained to that desk. He's got 3 options, none of them are good for plot, and Dany is George, right?
Yeah. It's still a good chapter, I agree. I really enjoyed reading it as well.
Yeah, for sure. I loved it.
Yeah. I had one point, actually. I think it was interesting how Dany kind of rewrites history in the light of the love she later developed for Drogo, because she mentions their wedding night and she's like, I was terrified but also so excited, and no, she was mostly terrified. And I don't want to get into the whole discussion about their wedding night really, but it's interesting to her character, I think, to see how she thinks back to that day and that part of her life.
Yeah, it's very similar to Sansa and misremembering the kiss with the Hound.
But I think it is instructive, however, that when you go back and read that Game of Thrones chapter and her wedding night, it isn't that kind of unpleasant experience that it was depicted as being in the show, where he basically just sort of bends her over and she's in tears and he just takes her. It's not like that.
No, it's not. But it's not. It's not love at first sight, and he was my sun and stars immediately. Like, it took some time,
no, you're
and
right. You're right. Agree.
Okay. Anything else?
I kind of feel like if you're Doran and you're sending in, your son to go and woo this woman, or maybe you should send him a bit like Prince Ali Ababwa, like in Aladdin. Like, you want to go in looking impressive. Like, you can't be smuggled in with 2 mates. You've got to go in on a big fleet of ships.
Right.
And, like,
was his worry that they would get
shit.
caught or something? Like, their plan would be seen and brought back to Westeros?
Well, I think, he couldn't just send Quentyn with a big fleet and just show to the world that Quentyn was going to get to Dany. But I think he expected something a bit in between, with a bigger retinue and not going by hiding themselves, but once they were in the right part of the world, assuming...
I guess because he's always trying to keep his options open, how bad would it have been if he had been like, hey, I think she needs a fleet to come home, and he just sent a fleet? I mean, that he would have been saying, well, prepare the passes for war, I guess, but the crown is already kind of busy. I think he would have had time.
I mean,
isn't that against Doran's interest of, working the subtle subterfuge?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. He doesn't want to do that, but I'm saying, how badly would that have turned out if he had, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, the other question is, how much of a fleet does Doran actually have?
That's a good question, because I don't think he has a big one, because ever since Nymeria and everything, they don't have boats anymore, right?
Yeah, but doesn't he have, ties over in Norvos or something? Can he
You mean the Golden Company? And, all those, there's the ships the Golden Company has. The Volantis fleet is already going to attack, quote-unquote, attack Marine itself. The Golden Company, bought some ships from Volantis, but then with the new elections, a lot of the Volantis fleet is actually sailing to war to Marine itself. I don't know that I don't know exactly how many ships he has and if there were a lot of options. And there's so many other kind of fleets out there at the moment that I don't know how much it would have worked.
And when did Quentyn leave Dawn?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know timeline.
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking because a lot happens in King's Landing, and obviously right now it's hell, and nothing works, and the crown is quite busy with everything else, and maybe they wouldn't really care, but I don't think that it was as true when he left and when Doran made the plan.
Right. Because things actually take time in this world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I imagine it would be somewhere around the time that Tywin died. It's something you could have done if planned enough after Tywin died, probably.
Yeah, but not before.
Yeah.
I have nothing else.
And I think you also cannot change the fact that Quentyn is not a Prince Ali kind of guy, and even with a bigger, with a fleet and something.
Even Aladdin, okay?
but I was just going to say, Prince Ali was not really a Prince Ali kind of guy, and that was my point there.
Yeah.
Doran should recognize that his son is no great shakes, and therefore give him retinue, give him people that will... Give him a fleet, give him something.
Okay, but...
He's not going to just want the physical presence of your son, right?
But Aladdin had a wizard, okay?
50,000 spears or something?
Yeah,
he
promises Dawn.
That's a good gift.
Right,
yeah,
he has nothing with him in the day of this wedding that she needs right now.
Yeah, what she needs most right now, in terms of Westeros at least, is a fleet. And so, I think perhaps it's something they could and should have waited on until she got closer to Westeros.
Agree.
I mean, it probably wouldn't
absolutely.
Anyway, but
No, it was crazy to send him into this huge trip that couldn't work.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if because his retinue is in half, right? Half the people he left with died along the way.
Okay,
yeah.
6 to 3. That's not.
Yeah, but one of them's a maester, another, maybe that would have carried a little more weight.
Yeah, 50% seems more devastating than that. Poorly handled.
Yeah, for sure. I think though that Dany, she is a little quick to judge and decide to not trust him because of Quait's prophecy. Because I don't think the prophecy actually warned her about everyone in the prophecy. It was more of a, they're coming, but it's not necessarily they're coming and it's going to be bad.
Doesn't she just say, beware the XYZ?
Yeah.
Bina, did you call her Quaithy?
Yeah. What's the name?
Well, I think everyone pronounces it Quaith.
Yeah, and everyone pronounces it Tolkien, but it's Tolkien, so
That's
supposed to be Yule.
That's a good point.
Bina speaks the queens.
Me and Queen Liz, we know the name of Quaithy. When I'm round at Buckingham Palace for tea.
Yeah, it's like all those plebes that call it a GIF. Am I right, guys?
Back in the day when you were 20, if some dickhead frog had turned up with like no retinue, would you have taken him as your husband? She'd be like, no, I would have married Prince Philip. He was like a tall military officer. He had peace. Kind of conversations we have.
Yeah. Just bouncing ideas about Game of Thrones off of.
I bet you she watches Game of Thrones. She's like 90. What else is she doing? I'm like plotting the downfall of Meghan, obviously.
She's like
Dragon Queen. She's my favorite.
Okay, this took a turn. Are we done with the Dany chapter?
I think that is the signal that we're done with the chapter.
Okay.
Yeah, my only other.
God damn it! We're done with the chapter, man.
This is a quick dismissal. Like, it's just that weird little dream she has. I just want to mention it. The weird little dream, whether it's a warlock, having a corpse spouse, blue lips reference to like Euron or warlocks or something. It's just it's something to file away for future foreshadowing. But it was like 2 lines, so there's really nothing to pull from it.
Well, thanks for bringing it up then.
Thanks, Matt.
We can move on.
No, I agree. It's probably of significance just to her character, even if it's not to the plot. So moving on. So we jump forward 20 chapters again to Arya 2 / the ugly little girl, which takes place 2 days later, on June 24th. I don't know how the guy even knows that it's 2 days later, because it's so disconnected. But anyway.
We don't even know if it's a guy, actually. I mean, it could be a girl.
That's right.
Yeah, why can't it be a girl, Marie?
I mean, this is Reddit, so it probably isn't, but,
It can be a girl. I'd be very happy with either, frankly. I don't really care. So, Matt, the other Matt, can you do the recap for us?
Sure. This is going to be long. Just bear with me. And now an excerpt from the Game of Thrones for Dummies, Chapter 9, How to Become a Master Assassin in 10, 15, let's say 23 easy steps. Number 1. Witness your father's execution at the hands of a child who is also engaged to your sister. 1A. Before you see your father's severed head casually roll across the steps of a place of worship while a crowd of your fellow humans vigorously cheer his capital punishment, like that reaction shot from the Aquaman trailer, get him to hire a personal bodyguard of the leader of another kingdom who is somehow retired and has free time now. Yeah, get that guy to begin training you in rare combat arts that fit your small stature, because nothing beats the advantage of being born into a rich and powerful family. 2. After your extremely niche trainer gets killed, while protecting you, and after this sniveling, snot-nosed kid, who has also already caused the loss of your pet and the death of your sister's pet, randomly decides to go off book because he got bored torturing cats and maybe his own brother or something. Anyway, after that kid starts a revolution in one sentence, escape the city with some posthumous help from your father, of course, and conveniently run into a member of the most exclusive assassins guild in the world, save his life, and convince him to kill people for you, because it's all about who you know. 3. Somehow trick this master assassin who is much more intelligent and knowledgeable than you. Was it a test the whole time? Nah, you're just that good. Get your foot/coin in the door. 4. Be outdoorsy, or at least naturally athletic. Well, having your own stables, barracks, and blacksmith as a kid certainly helps. Again, that wealthy family. Oh, and you definitely need to be able to kill people in cold blood. Your first should probably be by age 12 or so. 5. Street smarts. Gotta get that solid practical real-world experience, get a job in the service industry, participate in a battle, witness torture, be able to keep your cool around a mean boss, learn the terms of the industry, find out resurrection and magic are possible, squire for an outlaw knight, gets stuck in a loop of kidnapping and escapes. Street smarts. 6. Return from your study abroad only to find that your mother and brother and most of your fellow countrymen have been betrayed and murdered because a 90-year-old man still can't handle rejection. 7. Have no one left. Father executed, mother murdered, oldest brother murdered, sister imprisoned and forced to marry the enemy, pet wolf went AWOL, younger brothers murdered and burned, allegedly, trainer and protector number 1, dead, probably, protector number 2 who helped you escape, dead, definitely, protector number 3 who almost got you back home even though you vowed to kill him, is currently dying at your feet and begging you to give him mercy. 7A, super important side note here, do not kill protector number 3, your sister will need him later. Number 8, pay your entrance fee. 9, alright, on to the 5-year gap, cue the music, begin the training montage. Wait, what's that? What do you mean too many flashbacks? Alright. Then, when you begin your training, do something to make you stand out, like killing a guy without permission so you can skip some levels. 11 is the new 20, you know. Jesus Christ, she's still 11 in the Mercy chapter. Can we officially retcon everyone's ages here? No? Moving on then. 10, continue with the accelerated training. Should you ever be forced to train while blinded, just use your rare magical gift that you inherited from who? That's right, your family bloodline, in order to use a cat's vision to see for you. 10A, the waif is not your competition. The waif is not your enemy. The waif is there to help you with your training. Do not get into a Terminator chase scene with the waif broadcasting to the entire city you're members of the Assassin's Guild. 11. After you've cleared enough Ingrams from your body, learn the true secrets of the many-faced god, visit the Hall of Faces and undergo exteriorization by absorbing your first face, reach FM level 1. 12. Successfully complete your first assignment. 13. Start an internship to continue training. 14 through 23 are unknown at this time. Higher levels and practices are closely guarded by the church. But what's life without a little mystery, a little adventure, a leap of faith into the abyss, a wager for one's very soul? If you aren't willing to risk, end up getting frozen in the heart of a storm, have you truly lived? Remember your house words, just do it. That's it.
Bravo.
Well done.
We should probably do any Mercy chat in the after show, though.
Yeah.
People who are not.
Yeah, no, I wasn't gonna.
Man alive, it only takes 12 steps to get sober. So what was this chapter about?
Well, she's becoming an acolyte.
Yeah, basically, she gets her first assignment and kills the insurance guy, whatever you wanna call him. And then there is a really good scene with all of the various other members of the Faceless Men. No, I know, but it's fair. It's fair to actually summarize the chapter in a meaningful way.
It's about how she isn't really leaving Arya behind, but she's pretending.
Right, yeah, she's still
fighting
with that. And yeah, when I first, this is one of my favorite chapters. Arya being my favorite character, and there's a lot of good Faceless Men info, and for me, always, the key line when first reading this chapter is how the Faceless Men pick out their targets with, I know this guy or I do not know this man. And so that just kind of, it threw away one theory of her getting assigned to kill someone that she is aware of, where the Faceless Men purposely don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, why is that?
Well, conflicts of interest.
Yeah.
But is it like they wouldn't go through with it, or they'd be recognized, or?
Well, yeah, or they would do it for the wrong reasons, and it's not the Faceless Men way.
Yeah, you're supposed to do this without judgment on the other person.
Like it changes anything.
I thought it was extreme judgment, that the Faceless God had determined that he had to die.
Right, yeah, but it's not. But
it's not their judgment.
Carrying it out, but they're not. It's not their place. It's their place to carry out the mission, not judge the person, as that's already been done for them.
Which is very hypocritical, because in the end they do decide to kill the guy. So.
Oh well, yeah. That's that's a given. There's plenty of there's plenty of holes in this mythology of theirs.
Yeah.
But it is interesting with Arya getting her first assignment, where she goes through this whole process of trying to basically pick out flaws in this guy's character to make him out to be an evil person and kind of, justify her reason for killing this man. And the kindly man is always like, no, it's not your place to do this. He's just a normal guy. But, he's been paid for and the price has been made, and therefore.
It might be something that actually drives her away from the Faceless Man, is that I don't think she's going to take that bullshit that we don't judge, we only carry out the deed.
Yeah.
So the scene where she gets her new face was vividly written and amazing when she feels the fear and the feeling of the girl she's wearing the face of, and she feels like someone is strangling her, someone is hitting her. I thought that was really powerful writing.
Yeah, I think it goes to what Bina mentioned before, like how good George is at horror writing, and like that you do feel kind of suffocated, like you kind of, you feel claustrophobic reading it.
Mm-hmm. But it's psychological horror as well. Like, yeah, obviously it's creepy to have all these faces and all of that, but it's he grasps the terror at being beaten, and that's quite interesting.
Yeah, and I just love like kind of getting a solid explanation as we can get to like kind of how their particular brand of magic works with obviously the blood being important as it drips down her face and then physically kind of absorbing this face like into herself, and it's my interpretation that essentially that face is now a part of her, and she can kind of switch between that and her own or any other one she kind of takes on at will when she gets good enough at it, and also kind of like how they're able to
so once you've melded with it, then you can switch back and forth whenever you want.
Yeah, that's always been that's my theory on it.
Yeah, that's interesting. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Does that mean that the Faceless Men cannot use this face anymore? They cannot give it to anyone else?
Yes, I would say so. Well, I mean, it's unclear as to whether or not they can then take it off of her again.
Right. Well, but why would they want to reuse it? Because
I don't know.
Is some little girl going to be looked for as a murderer? Yeah,
but not necessarily a murderer, but at least a thief. But there could be.
Once she's in Westeros, she can use it, right? I mean it.
Yeah, exactly. And there could be others. I don't know, other faces that could be very useful to multiple faceless men, and it just means they can use it on only one person.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not for us to know what actual blood magic it can do. I mean, we've seen what it can do in these books, but I don't think we're meant to know like the extent or exactly how it works. Just that it's like the most powerful magic that you can do, which I think goes all the way back to the first book with like Mary Mesder or something saying that.
Yeah, I agree. It's nice for it to be a bit enigmatic. I think this is an amazing chapter. I think it's befitting of a character like Arya to get such a strong final chapter. And I can't believe it's a final chapter that we're reading.
That's crazy, isn't it?
The only note really I had, other than just being thrilled at the quality of the writing, was that, again, it's another character who feels homeless. There's a point where she says, literally, if I leave, where will I go? And that's what Theon thinks in his chapter. If I leave here, where will I go? I can't go back to my home islands. They don't want me there. I can't go anywhere else. Everyone scorns me. This is pretty much where I'm stuck. Dany has a kind of similar thought process where she's like, I'm kind of stuck here. I have to, as Marie says, become not Targ, submissive. This is where I'm stuck. And I think there's something really very melancholy about all three characters who are very unmoored from their home and their families and their traditions.
Well, I think in Theon's case, he actually admits that Winterfell has been more of a home to him than, Pike or the Islands ever had. And that his place should be here, and, there's a line, there are ghosts in Winterfell, and I'm one of them. So I think
he
that
at
might
least
be the
becomes
difference.
more maybe reconciled to it, but still being a ghost is a melancholy thing.
Right, because it implies you're dead. You're not the person you were.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I thought there was, sometimes it's forced, but I think here there really is a thematic similarity between the 3 chapters. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. But in Arya's case, I think it's interesting to me, it shows hope. It gives me hope for her character. And it's weird because at the same time, she's going deeper into the Faceless Men organization. But in this chapter, when she's like, but where would I go if I left? It's sad, but it also shows that the reason she does that is more because she doesn't know where to go, except here, and not because she really wants it. I don't know how you can really want it anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know how that makes you feel hopeful for her.
It makes me feel hopeful because I believe that when she has a reason to get out of the Faceless Men, she will use it, and it will help her to find herself again.
But I think the more indoctrinated she becomes, she'll learn that it's not just something you can give a 2 weeks notice on,
Yeah, for sure.
I think that it will have to be a major thing, of her burning down the entire place or something like that. She just can't leave.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not saying it's going to be easy plot-wise, but it just shows that there's still a part of her that feels like Arya, and even if she denies it, she's still her somewhere.
Yeah, I think the biggest part of that is her recognizing finally her warging ability and knowing that it's not just dreams that connect her and Nymeria. She's not just dreaming about wolf packs. That she's able to warg through the cat.
Yeah, that's significant.
I think that might reignite some kind of Stark thing.
Starkiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, running into Nymeria kind of later on in the books is something that I think has a good chance of happening.
Oh no, she's got to ride Nymeria into battle to defeat the Boltons or the army of the undead or something. That's gonna be awesome.
Defeat another on a dead ice fighter versus her on a dire wolf.
I love it. Right? Call George.
Yeah, I'm sure he will be happy to hear what you want to see for Arya.
Yeah, I feel like, all right, motherfuckers, I'm going to do the opposite.
Yeah.
Something to say about her character arc to the end of this book, because I'm sure for many of us we read this and then there was a gap before Mercy.
Yeah.
And I felt very happy at the end of this book. I felt it had come to a proper, she has become now a true acolyte. We've finally got the big reveal for her, which is the secret of how they change faces, and I actually felt genuinely quite satisfied on my original read. And we can get into Mercy later, but
yeah, she has.
It was a good close for me. In a book that didn't have many closes, had lots of false hope, I felt this was a good place to pause.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think her and maybe Jaime have the best, final chapters in this book, where it's okay, they're continuing on with their journey rather than we've reached their almost turning point and we haven't seen it yet. I don't know, maybe I said that wrong.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Varley. It's just because I don't think his and Brienne and the Lady Stoneheart stuff is going to get wrapped up in one chapter. So, it kind of needed to be cut there.
But you could see where it's going, and it's in line with their story arc and everything else, where everything else was building up to this one climatic point. There's no battle that Arya is about to go into. There's no battle that Jaime's about to go into. They're going to meet separate challenges, but none of them are going to be... I feel like it's going to be more of Brienne's, pivot point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
than it is actually Jaime's, because Jaime can just die, and then that'd be a bummer. But his story arc is complete by him going to Brienne instead of to Cersei, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Gosh.
You just broke Bina's heart. And I agree, Arya has very few chapters in Dance, but they're all very significant, and this one was a very good one to end her story arc on in this book.
Yeah, there's no filler in her chapters.
No. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about Mercy.
No, neither did I actually, because I don't think I've read it again since.
And also, I think there's going to be a reread chapter, presumably with Mercy in it. I can't remember now, but
well, I think
if we want to do that.
We kind of.
Isn't it up to you, Bina?
Yeah, we almost decided to include them in. Kind of.
I'm just flipping forward. I mean, I think it must be there somewhere. I don't know timeline-wise how the person put it in. Maybe it's at the very end or something. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think there'll be a place to discuss Mercy that isn't today necessarily.
Okay.
Because I haven't reread it either.
Yeah, so it might then be the most interesting conversation if no one has read it recently. It'll be interesting to discuss anyway, I think, as we haven't picked on the TWOW chapters as much as we have on the actual published chapters. I think so. If we want to continue this, it's interesting to put them in the timeline. If we just can't wait for the reread to be over, well, maybe not, but I don't think that's the case.
We're in the final 10 episodes.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's happening, and that's including TWOW. So
I feel very nostalgic.
I know. The end is... I can't believe we've got to this many episodes, like 95.
Didn't you think Winds would be out by now? When we started?
I just remember
4 years ago.
When we started it, well, we did Lord of the Rings in 8, so maybe it'll be like 12. I don't know what I thought, but I didn't think it would be 96.
Well, as soon as we finish, Winds will be announced. We know that's true, so...
Oh, well, let's get on with it then.
It will happen.
No, we need to keep padding it out to give him more time.
Yeah. George is like, no, there's this stupid podcast called VOK. They're doing a linear reread. I gotta wait.
See, everyone out there thinks it's the pressure of Game of Thrones that held his writing up, but really it was the pressure of the reread.
It's clearly us.
It's happening.
Okay. Should we officially end this?
I think so.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for being here today. It was very fun. I don't actually know, Bina, are you hosting the next one? Oh yeah, because you already put out the CTA. Yeah.
I had to, because I'm travelling out in November, so I thought I need to get that one weekend locked down. Although there's not like a great many people up for those chapters.
I mean, if you need
I'm
me,
in.
Yeah, I'm in as well. I just didn't write it in because I was hosting this one, but if you need people, I'm always in.
I think these final 10 we might be needing all hands on deck.
Okay.
Yeah. I think they're good. I mean, I was like Skype bombing the VOC kind of reread curator check.
Yeah.
I just assumed that the chapters are going to be dreadful, and I was reading and going, oh my god, this is really good. This is really good. And, that's kind of sad, but yeah.
Yeah. So for all of our listeners, the chapters on the next episode are going to be the Epilogue of Dance, Victarion 1, aka the Iron Suitor, and John 9. So we're almost done with King's Landing, actually. That's what it means.
We are done with King's Landing.
Yeah. Once Kevin is gone. Yeah.
Ooh, and I have stuff to say about Cersei.
All right. Well, that's one episode to look forward to. Do we have other episodes, forthcoming things?
I think that FT Ward is going to do something on Watchmen, but not per episode, which I think is fortuitous, because having watched the first episode of it it's clearly set up that it's going to be, it's going to be a slow build. So after one episode, you'd be going like, I don't know really what's happening. Mm-hmm. So maybe after 3 episodes, do one, and then maybe after 6, and then the end of the season, depending on how it shakes out.
Okay.
We definitely could do one after probably this week's episode. There's probably enough to discuss. But
the first episode is like would be 5 minutes of what just happened. I don't know what just happened.
What did we just watch? Sure. Let me tell you about the Tulsa race riots.
I mean, if I were...
It was really good.
Yeah. I mean, all I would say is if people are watching it and interested, there is a podcast by The Hollywood Reporter called TV's Top 5, where they're TV critics. They put out a podcast every week and interview a showrunner, and this week's is with Damon Lindelof, and it does not spoil the rest of Watchmen, so you can listen to it. But it's really interesting with him talking about his relationship to the Watchmen, to Alan Moore, why he's taken the approach to that material. Also, why he picked that particular race riot. It's because he read an article on it by Ta-Nehisi Coates. It's just really interesting on how he approached it, why he has famously said it's a one-season thing, how HBO treats that. So if you want to know all that kind of good stuff, then I found it really... And it's probably like 20 minutes. It was really interesting.
But he's just playing it for one season?
Yeah.
Huh.
Oh, boy.
I would say that I haven't put up a CTA yet, but I have binge-watched BoJack first half final season this afternoon. I want to talk about it, so I'll try and make that happen. And
cool.
I'm sure people will want to talk about the new season of The Crown as well, which is out later this month.
Yes, and maybe Catherine the Great.
Any last words, anyone?
Remember me when I was pretty.
I don't remember. Thank you for hosting, Murray.
Well, thank you guys for being here. It was nice. Should do this more often.
Fun chatting with you all. Thank you so
much. Bye, guys.
Good talking to you guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Talk to you soon.
See you.
Cheers. Yeah, I'm actually reading Fire and Blood for the first time, and I plan on asking Patrick over and over and over again to come back and do the series he was planning on doing on that, because we talked about it actually when we saw each other this summer. So
he should. I mean, some of the world book stuff he's done has been amazing. So. Yeah. I think, he's a great person for doing some of that lore.
He's on having kids, and let me tell you,
Welcome, Matt. Welcome.
Yeah.